All right, guys, welcome to the Choose FI radio podcast. Today, we're going to be interviewing JD Roth. JD Roth has earned his place on the Mount Rushmore of FI, and in light of the fact that FinCon is right around the corner and a lot of people are talking about the Plutus Awards, it's worth noting that JD Roth won a Lifetime Achievement Award at the first year of that conference. And so, with all that being said, we are thrilled to bring him on the show to share his story, to share the 6 stages of financial freedom, and spend a little bit of time talking about where this FI movement may be going in the future. I'm also incredibly excited to tease you with this announcement that we have at the end of the episode. And I don't think it's hyperbole to say that this may be the biggest announcement to hit the personal finance community over the last 5 years. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Without any further ado, welcome to the Choose FI radio podcast.
You're listening to Choose FI Radio. The blueprint for financial independence lives here. If you're looking to unlock the secrets to financial independence and early retirement, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and join a community of like-minded people who are getting off the hamster wheel and taking control of their lives in the pursuit of financial independence. Choose FI, your home for financial independence online.
Brad, talk about introducing someone that really doesn't need to be introduced. Today, we're bringing JD Roth, originally from GetRichSlowly.org and now writing over at Money Boss. I just recently saw a statistic. This guy's been blogging for over 20 years.
20 years?
20 years. Yeah, I think the last...
Is that possible?
I don't even know. I didn't even know blogs were around that long, but apparently that's a true stat. So we've got him on the show today, and he's going to be sharing a little bit of his story with us and just how this whole thing started. And what's really fascinating to me, in my mind, JD was the first person to start talking about personal finance as a journey that he was living right along with you. Up to that point, it was more of a guru mentality where you had these guys that were worth millions and millions of dollars, and they said, hey, here's 10 things that will make you rich instantly. And oh, by the way, sign up for my premium class. JD said, hey, I'm just a guy that makes mistakes and thinks I found something that's kind of cool. And I kind of want to figure this out with you. And I don't know it all, but I'm willing to document my thoughts and ideas for critical feedback and then improve them as I go. And he's been doing this for such a long period of time that his ideas have just every single year gotten better and better and better. And so I'm just thrilled to get a chance to talk about this today.
Yeah, you and me both. I mean, JD's site was literally the first blog that I ever read in my entire life. And I followed him. And like you said, he was just a regular guy. You know, he read comic books, which, you know, I had a huge collection of comic books. He had financial issues, right? So many of us do. And it's that process. It's working through and realizing, okay, I can make changes. Maybe I made mistakes in the past, but I can make changes that will help me move forward in a more rational and deliberate manner. So I'm going to take control of my life. And that was the message that I always got from JD. And I know personally, JD really changed the entire trajectory of my life. This is a story that I don't think I've ever told publicly, but the very first time that I ever heard of travel rewards, right, which is what I became known for on the internet, is through JD. JD had an article so many years ago about this one British Airways card that he opened. And I wound up reading it. I'm like, oh, that can't be true. That's impossible. But I trusted JD. And it was this guy I've been reading for years. So I said, okay, I trust in JD. I opened the card up, got this bonus, and I wound up getting over $4,000 in travel value out of this one credit card. And what's really, really cool, kind of coming full circle, and we'll talk about this in a minute, is that when we met up with JD at Camp Mustache in Florida this past January, I went up to him and told him this story. And he literally had not used the British Airways miles from that card. And I was able to teach him how to use them. I mean, how amazing is that? If you wrote a story, you couldn't write it like that. It's amazing.
Dude, I was there for that, and it literally blew my mind. So JD, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
Good. Thanks, guys. I'm glad to be here. This is awesome. Yeah, I think that story is awesome too, Brad. And the one thing to know is I still haven't used those miles. I still haven't. I mean, it's only been like about 10 months since we talked, but you'd think I would have used them by now. But no, in fact, I've started accumulating more miles because I think I talked to you at Camp Mustache about the Chase Sapphire Reserve. I think it's what it is.
Yeah.
So I signed up for that. I got a ton more miles, and now I have like 300,000 miles that I just haven't used. I need to do it, don't I?
Yeah, you bet. Come on, man. You gotta travel. So if you want personal help, I'm always here. So you know where to reach me.
Awesome.
I feel like you have plenty of opportunities for different camps and meetups all around the country. So at least you have excuses, whether or not you execute on those or not, you certainly have the opportunity available.
It's true. It's true.
I was thinking, where should we start with you? Because obviously you have so much content that we could dig through, both on getrichslowly.org and on your new site, Money Boss. But I think for our audience, we have a lot of the old faithful, the vanguard of FI, the people that have been in the FI community for the last 10 years, the people that discovered personal finance through Get Rich Slowly. But there's also a lot of people that are going to be finding JD for the first time, potentially through this podcast and our website at choosefi.com, because there's a lot of new faces in our community.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your backstory? And did you discover the personal finance community or the FI community?
Honestly, it was the personal finance community. I hadn't heard of financial independence as a concept. Well, I guess I read about it in Your Money or Your Life, but it never really clicked. And I suppose most of your audience is going to be familiar with Your Money or Your Life by Joe Dominguez and Vicki Robin. And that book is very, very influential. And they talk about financial independence there, but I never seriously considered it as something that I could pursue. It seemed like a pipe dream, you know? So the financial independence stuff came later. It wasn't until I had been writing at Get Rich Slowly for quite a while, and even after I sold the site, that I started reading about financial independence. But personal finance, that's something that I've been interested in all my adult life because I've always struggled with money, or I don't anymore, but I used to struggle with money, and I struggled with money for about 20 years. My parents had never taught me the financial skills that I needed. I was one of the fortunate few that had a personal finance class in high school. I know most people don't get that, but I didn't do well in the class, surprisingly. So I went off to college and got into deep credit card debt and just started accumulating the debt. And it got worse over time so that eventually I had over $35,000 in consumer debt. So I started Get Rich Slowly as an attempt to document my process, kind of what Brad was talking about, documenting my process, learning about money, trying to teach other people what I was learning, and sharing what I was getting right, but also what I was getting wrong. Because I'm human. I do dumb things. I buy too many comic books or whatever. And so I started reading and writing about personal finance and sharing that. And it just resonated with a lot of people. And that's where I got my start, I guess, with the financial stuff.
JD, I'm curious about the $35,000 in credit card debt. How long did it take to accumulate that? And really, what did you have to show for that $35,000? I mean, did you have anything? Was it, at the end of the process, hey, I just frivolously wasted this money? Talk us through the mindset of how you got to $35K in debt.
Okay. Well, first of all, I say $35,000 in consumer debt because I also count my car loan in there. It was about $25,000 in credit card debt. I just want to be clear on that. So it started in college, really. I grew up, my family was relatively poor. My parents didn't make a lot of money. They didn't know how to handle the money that they did make. My father was a serial entrepreneur, so he had all these great ideas and he had some successful businesses, but he always just frittered away the money he got. If he had a good month or a good year, he'd go out and buy an airplane and a sailboat and a personal computer back when personal computers were new. And so the example I saw is if you have money, you spend it. So I graduated from high school, went off to college. And I didn't have a whole lot of money in college. I was there on scholarship. But the people around me, a lot of them came from wealthy families. And it seemed to me at the time, I don't know whether it was true, but it seemed to me at the time that they were able to buy whatever they wanted. And so I wanted to spend like they did. And fortunately, if you go down to the university center, there's always these tables where you can sign up for credit cards. And so I signed up for credit cards. And that's how I got started. First, it was just a $500 credit card. But eventually, after you carry a balance on that for a number of years and keep making payments on time, they'll boost you up and they'll give you a $2,000 credit limit. And so basically, I graduated from college in 1991 with the start of a credit card habit. And that just grew over time. I always kept my balance almost full on whatever cards I had. And I would make my payments every month. And it was dumb. It's pretty much the prototypical stupid behavior with a credit card. Only I was making sure that I made my payments every month. The credit card companies love me, man. They were making bank.
I'm just curious. I know we talk about travel rewards and these different types of sign-up bonuses that are available that allow you to travel the world. What sorts of awesome bonuses were you getting for signing up for those cards?
I got a plastic card. No, there were no bonuses. They might have existed back then, but I don't remember seeing them. And it wasn't what I was after. I was just after, oh, wow, look, this has a high credit limit. I can spend more money. And so Brad asked what I was buying and what I had to show for it. I was buying books. I bought a lot of books. Before I purged here a few years ago, I counted I had over 3,000 books. So That's a lot of books. And I had to store the books. I bought computers and I bought comic books. I did have things to show for it, but it was outdated technology. It was books and it was comics.
Wow. 3,000 books. I mean, if those are hardcovers at $20 a pop, that's $60,000 in books.
They were used books. I wanted to be able to get a lot of books.
Yeah, right. I remember also with the credit cards at the student union at my university, they used to give away, I think, Frisbees and T-shirts, right? So instead of travel rewards, maybe you got a T-shirt for it.
One of my favorite stories about stupid money behavior, JD's stupid money behavior, is how I picked my first bank account. And it was because of a Frisbee. I remember it was the first day of college. You go to sign up for your classes and there's these tables for local bank accounts. And one of them was like a local credit union. They weren't offering anything. So why would I sign up for that? But this big national bank was giving away a Frisbee. So I signed up for that and brought on a $5 a month fee, basically. And that $5 a month eventually went up to $7 a month. And that free Frisbee ended up costing me hundreds of dollars over the next 10 or 15 years because I signed up for the bank account that had a monthly fee.
JD, one thing that you snuck in there was that you went to college on a scholarship. And we're actually always looking for actionable tips for the audience. I'm curious, are there any actionable tips for how you got that scholarship? Or was it a just full merit scholarship because you were brilliant? Or, talk us through what that was and could the audience take anything away from it?
It was a merit scholarship, but not because I was brilliant. It was because I worked hard and I tested well. So there's no doubt I did well on the tests, and the PSAT helped me get the scholarships. But I was also very studious and involved. So in high school, I did my work, I did my homework, and I worked hard. And I think that's the important thing. The people that I know that went to college on scholarship all share common things, and that's they worked hard in high school. And that's probably not the answer that people want to hear, but that's the way it works, is you work hard, you get good grades, and it's just what your parents tell you,
Yeah, that's a great answer, though. I mean, we're certainly not looking for anything in particular, but that's valuable, I think. And I'm curious, did you search out a particular college or university that you thought or knew you could get a scholarship to, or did you have aspirations for the Ivy League, or was it, hey, I know I did well on the SAT and PSAT, I'm going to go for X, Y, and Z university where I can get a full merit scholarship?
Well, one thing to understand is that younger JD, even as recently as 5 or 10 years ago, I was not very self-directed. I did what I thought was expected of me. I did what I thought I was supposed to do. And so that means if there's something like applying for colleges, I'm only doing what my counselor or my parents are telling me to do and not actively I know some people apply for dozens of colleges. I didn't. I applied for 3 or 4 because my counselor and my parents said, okay, these are the 3 or 4 you should apply to. And then I went to the one that gave me the most financial aid. And in that case, it was a full ride scholarship and grants. So I think one of the big differences between now and then, and this is actually a theme I try to write about at Money Boss all the time, is now I'm very self-directed. I try to have what I call an internal locus of control. I feel like it doesn't matter what kind of bad luck I have. It doesn't matter what kind of crap happens to me. I'm still responsible for how I respond to that crap. If I want my life to change, I'm the one who has to change that. And that's not how I used to be at all. I used to be like Eeyore, man. I was like, oh gosh, my life just isn't what I want it to be. I want to be a writer, but I'm not a writer. I wish I lived in a different place. But I never did anything to try to change my circumstances. It's only once I learned to take control and say, no, I'm the one in charge of creating the life I want, that things got better for me.
You control what you can control, and then you don't sweat the difference, right? There is things that you can actually affect, change that you can actually affect. And I think so many of us start freaking out about everything else. It's just not worth your mental energy.
Yeah.
So you decide to start writing about personal finance. Would you have even called it a blog at this point? Were they actually called blogs?
No. So what I say is I started blogging before blog was even a word. And that's true. So for me, when I graduated from college, first of all, I wasn't actively interested in personal finance yet. Yes, I was interested in trying to find ways out of debt, but I was searching for magic bullets. I remember a couple times I sent away for things that I saw in magazines or newspapers, these ads where write into us today and we'll show you how to get out of debt overnight, or how to make $20,000 a year in your spare time. I was searching for magic bullets. I was trying to get rich quickly. I wasn't taking the correct approach, looking at the long road. So yeah, I graduate from college, and right around then is when the internet starts becoming more prominent. So I graduated in 91. I think I read a book about the World Wide Web in 1993, 94. I know that I got online and made my first web page in 1994. And then in 1997, I started basically what I would call a web journal. That's what we called them back then, was a web journal. And I started a web journal trying to document my physical fitness, because along with that, I was struggling with my weight. And so I was documenting my progress. And I had nobody reading it. Nobody was reading it back in 1997. And then in 1998, I started what you would recognize as a blog today. I was just writing about like where I'm going on vacation, what movies I'm seeing. I had to hand code it, though. There was no automation. And that got a little tedious, so I just gave it up until the automation software came around a couple years later. And then I picked it up, and that's when I started writing a regular blog. And that was my personal blog. And I say that I wrote about cats, computers, and comic books, because those are the three things that I really wrote about. And I built an audience. At first, it was just friends and family, and then it was more and more people. And then it was in 2004 that I decided, I'm sick and tired of being in debt. I have this credit card debt. I have the auto loan. I feel weighted down by it. And around that time, my wife and I was married at the time, she and I bought a new house. And when we bought the house, on paper, we could afford it. But the reality was, once we moved into the house, it just felt like this burden. And I felt like I was drowning in debt. And I was like, how do I get out of this? And so I started going to the public library and checking out books about personal finance. And I was reading everything I could about personal finance. And in October of 2004, I sat down. I still have this document. I drafted this document. It was basically my plan for getting out of debt in 3 years. And it was October of 2004. I thought by December of 2007, I could be completely out of debt. Wrote up the plan. And then a couple months later on my personal blog, because I didn't have Get Rich Slowly yet, I hadn't started it, I wrote an article called Get Rich Slowly. It was basically me trying to crystallize all of these ideas that I had accumulated from the various books that I was reading. And I said, it looks as if there's no reliable way to get rich quickly, but there is a reliable way to get rich slowly. And here's how it's done. And I said, this is what I've learned. And for whatever reason, that article went viral, or what passed for viral at the time. It wasn't anywhere near like what viral would be today. And then a few months later, in April of 2006, I was fishing around for ways to make more money. And I thought, why don't I start a blog about personal finance? I'll start a blog. I'll call it Get Rich Slowly, because that article was so popular. And it'll be the first personal finance blog on the internet, I thought. And now I didn't realize there are already several other personal finance blogs, dozens of others, actually.
I think that blind spot was beneficial for you. I think that in many cases, it's very helpful not to know that there's anything else out there and just to assume that you're the first on the scene. I can say that I'm sure that we've benefited from that to a degree as well.
Yeah, well, and I think that's very true. And I actually think that people in the personal finance space, whether it's bloggers or authors or columnists or podcasters, I think it's actually dangerous to spend too much time reading or listening to what everybody else is doing. Because then you tend to fall into this echo chamber, and you're just responding to each other. And I think it actually hinders creativity and novelty, I guess. So I think it's good to stay up to date and to read now and then, or to listen now and then. But my advice is not to get too overwhelmed if you're creating in this space.
JD, I'm curious about the mindset of that original article, right? So that original Get Rich Slowly. Now, you were mired in debt. You really had no financial background, right? And you educated yourself. You went to the library and educated yourself. Talk me through that time. What did that process look like? What did you go in thinking? You're looking for this magic bullet, right? But I think you probably quickly realized there is no magic bullet. Talk us through that entire continuum there, from, hey, I'm looking for a magic bullet, to, okay, it's Get Rich Slowly.
Well, at the time, it was a little depressing, I guess, because I really wanted for there to be a quick answer. I wanted to be able to dig through and find some magic formula that was hidden away, some secret that very few people knew, that would allow me to go from deep in debt to prospering overnight. And of course, that doesn't exist. You've got to do the work. It's the same thing, again, going back to the scholarships that we talked about earlier. You've got to do the work. There's no shortcut. So once I resigned myself to that, to this idea that, oh, if I want to get out of debt, if I want to build wealth, I actually have to put in the effort to make more money, and I have to spend less. Spending less was the big thing for me because I was making a reasonable salary. I was making right around the average for Americans at the time. So that should be plenty of money, right? But I was spending money on all sorts of stuff. And plus I had the ongoing credit card debt. I think the closest I came to finding a magic bullet as far as getting out of debt was when I read about Dave Ramsey's version of the debt snowball, where you prioritize by paying off the smallest balances first. And it's not mathematically optimal, obviously, but it's psychologically optimal. And once I found that, once I latched onto this idea of using the Dave Ramsey flavor of the debt snowball, it made a huge difference because I was able to pay off 2 or 3 credit cards within a short amount of time because I had some smaller credit cards. And sure, I still had the huge balance, the $15,000 credit card or whatever it is. I don't remember what the balances were, but it didn't matter because I achieved those quick victories, which gave me a little bit better cash flow because the money wasn't going to minimum payments every month. And I was able to apply this psychological momentum and just keep at it.
Yeah, I agree with the debt snowball. I mean, clearly you kind of said it's not mathematically optimal. And I think just for the audience, that's because you're not, the math would suggest attack the highest interest rate debt first. And that's what JD was alluding to there. But what happens with this debt snowball is you pay off your smallest balance. So the minimum payment or whatever payment that was previously going to that then gets rolled into your next smallest balance. So it helps to accelerate the payment of each subsequent debt. And that's this quote unquote snowball. So I just wanted to point that out.
And from my experience, now that I've been writing about money for almost 12 years, oh my gosh, it's been that long. That's a long time. Now that I've been writing about money for almost 12 years, I've crunched the numbers before. And sure, the Dave Ramsey debt snowball does lead you to pay more than you would normally if you were attacking the high interest rates first, but it's actually not that much of a difference. And what I always say is, if you are going to succeed with the Dave Ramsey version of the debt snowball and you would fail because you get frustrated with the other version, what does it matter? It's if you're successful, that's what's most important, right? It doesn't matter if you're doing the optimal thing if it's not going to work for you. Try suboptimal, and if you're able to do it, that's what counts.
Yeah, suboptimal and following through is infinitely better than perfect optimization where you bail out.
Yeah, you said it much better than I did. That's exactly.
I'm going to latch onto that, put that in quotes, put it on my blog somewhere. JD said I said something better than he did. All right. So this is actually really interesting because Dave Ramsey was the gateway to personal finance for many of us, myself included. And I think that a lot of people in our audience, even people that disagree at varying levels with the Dave Ramsey principles, should at least be intellectually honest and say that he opened up the gates for many people to latch onto personal finance where they would not have otherwise.
Absolutely.
And so I guess what's so interesting to me is that you started with this idea of seeing how you could implement the debt snowball in your life. But I know that your journey took on a very unique flavor. You did something that Dave Ramsey wasn't doing. Dave Ramsey was giving you this method or this all-encompassing game plan that he had created. Yours was different. You brought people along for your own journey. You told stories about your life and interwove them with the principles that you had found valuable along the way. How did that change over the 6 years that you were writing over at Get Rich Slowly? What was there any intentionality behind that progression? And just what was the mindset of the author over that period of time?
First of all, there wasn't a lot of intentionality. I always say that I'm an accidental personal finance expert, and that's true. I mean, it's not like I have any kind of education in this other than the School of Hard Knocks. But as I was writing, I was kind of hashing out a philosophy. I didn't know it at the time, but I started basically tabula rasa. It was a blank slate. I didn't know anything about money. And so I had to learn all of this stuff. And I had to evaluate what I was reading. Do I agree with this or do I not agree with this? Does this match my experience or does it not match my experience? How do other people feel about it? How have other people succeeded following this particular author's advice or whatever advice I was finding? And so as time went on at Get Rich Slowly, at first it was kind of scattershot. It was like a shotgun approach. I was just like writing about all these different subjects. Here's how to do this kind of investing. Here's what index funds are. Here's this other type of investing. And eventually I narrowed my focus. So for example, I realized, I really do like index funds and I understand the philosophy behind them and I really latched onto them and that became my investment advice. Whereas when I started to Get Rich Slowly, I didn't have any particular investment advice. So eventually, over the 3 years that I owned the site and then the next 3 years that I was managing it, I went from being so scattershot to actually having specific philosophy and specific points that I was trying to get readers to understand and to take to heart.
JD, what sort of window would you say that you were you became the gateway for personal finance bloggers.
I don't know. I mean, to me, it's still odd to even think that happened. But Get Rich Slowly became very popular by, I would say, early 2007. It had nice readership numbers. And it was like that. Well, even up until I left the site, it still had huge readership. But I'd say 2007 to 2010 is the heyday of Get Rich Slowly, in my mind.
Yeah, for sure. And I remember during the heyday of Get Rich Slowly, it seemed like every single new personal finance blog that popped up inevitably contained backlinks to Get Rich Slowly. It was just this, repository of information and ideas. And I'm curious, because you had such engagement from your community. You had so many comments that were landing on your blog, so many different ideas that had to have fed into that. And it became, I'm just curious, to what degree do you attribute the readership and the community that formed around that site? Did those help generate the articles for the following years?
Yeah, absolutely, Jonathan. You're like hitting right on this. To me, the audience at Get Rich Slowly is what made Get Rich Slowly. It wasn't me. I was more like the caretaker or the tour guide or whatever. And everyone else around reading and commenting and sending me ideas, that's what made the site great. And so I learned quickly that, my readers have some amazing information that I need to share. And so I tried to create regular features. For example, on Friday, I would have what I called the Ask the Readers column. And that would be a reader question. I would submit it and ask for reader feedback. On Sundays, I would have a reader story. And it could be a story about how the reader succeeded with money or how they failed with money. And this all fed into creating the community at the site. And you're right, there were hundreds of comments on the articles at the peak, but it also gave me then more ideas about what to write about. It helped me see what people wanted to write about and what they wanted to learn.
That's fascinating, because that is the direct parallel to what we see here at Choosify. I think humans crave community. And I know I saw it when I was a reader. JD, I was a reader of yours for those 6 years you were there. And to see those hundreds of comments on every article, and I would read every single one. It was because it felt like you were part of something. You weren't just this island unto yourself. And I think that's what, moving into the FI community a little bit, and Choosify in particular, we have tried to make this as inclusive of a community as humanly possible.
And I think that's a huge, huge point. I've been sitting here thinking the word inclusive for the past 5 minutes, because it was a huge part of what I did at Get Rich Slowly. A lot of places, and this is not wrong, but a lot of other writers have very strong personalities, and they, through what they write or their attitudes or whatever it is, they tend to discourage certain kind of readers or involvement. And again, I'm not saying that's wrong. That works for them. Some people build huge audiences doing that. But for me, that's not who I am as a person. And that's not how I wanted the site to be. And so I tried to be very inclusive, and I tried to keep politics and religion off the site as much as possible. I took a political stance on one major topic, and only one major topic, the entire time that I was at Get Rich Slowly. And then I tried to be open-minded to everybody that came in, because I feel like everyone is trying to do their best, and my goal is to try to help them be their best too.
Yeah, I think that's so powerful. And it's so interesting to hear you verbalize that, because Brad and I have had extensive conversations about this. It doesn't matter which particular political ideology you lean to in order to be able to enjoy and appreciate and benefit from personal finance and from the FI community. This is a huge tent. And ultimately, what we're pursuing is this idea that if you make just a few right choices, if you decide to live this life just slightly smarter than your neighbors, you can win and you can reclaim your time. Why does that have to be political? Why do we have to include or exclude people based on some of these other beliefs when there's room for all of us to win with this message?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And one thing that frustrates me a lot with personal finance writing, and this is true in the financial independence community too, is this notion that there's a right way to do something. There's a right way to pay off debt. There's a right way to do housing. There's a right way to pursue financial independence. For me, there are optimal ways. Yes, it's true. There are often optimal ways, but that's not always the right way for you or for me or for anybody else. My motto at Get Rich Slowly was do what works for you. And what I meant by that was, hey, take all this information out there and pick the elements that are effective in your life that bring you the results that you want, and ignore the rest. It doesn't matter if somebody's telling you that, oh no, the right way to get out of debt is to pay off your high interest rates first. Yeah, that's optimal, but that's not necessarily right.
Yeah, and I love your continued use of that word optimal. And I think that's a word that I'm going to now use going forward. I think that's the perfect way to describe it. Sure, the math would suggest X, Y, and Z is optimal. But we constantly talk about you have to do what works for you. And we are not doctrinaire about anything. You will never find you need to do these 7 things to be a part of the Choose a FI community or the greater FI community. That's ridiculous. There are hundreds of different levers to pull, and you need to figure out what works for your life. But you do need to take action, right? You cannot just sit there and say, oh, that sounds great in theory. You need to take action.
Absolutely. Action is so important. To me, the older I get, the more I see that action is the number one thing that separates successful people from unsuccessful people in all aspects of life. If you want to be successful about paying off your debt or achieving financial independence, you have to take action. It's not enough to think about it. It's not enough to read about it. You've got to do some stuff.
Yeah, not only that, and what you talked about earlier with the internal locus of control. I think those two things, if you put them together, if you believe that you can affect change on not only your life, but the world around you, and you take action, man, that is a great combination.
And I think being resilient, because one thing to note is shit happens, right? Shit happens to everybody. And so it's not enough just to say that, I'm going to have an internal locus of control and make the choices for my own life. You want to do that, but you also have to recognize that not everyone starts from the same place, and you're going to have bad things happen to you. But when the bad things happen, you have to have the resilience to say, okay, yeah, this happened. It sucks, but I'm going to move forward, and here's how I'm going to solve it.
JD, somewhere along your journey in the personal finance community, but also in the financial independence community, you did create an overarching philosophy for financial independence and financial freedom. And you distilled that down into an infographic called The Stages of Financial Freedom. And I'd love to hear you explore that with us today.
Yeah. So it's important to realize, I think I mentioned this earlier, that when I started writing about money, I didn't have any kind of philosophy. I was like taking bits and pieces from all over the place and trying to figure out what I believed. And even when I left Get Rich Slowly, after 6 years writing there, I had begun to crystallize a philosophy, but it wasn't all the way crystallized. And it was only by taking several years off to contemplate my navel, to exercise, to travel, to do all these things. During this time off, these ideas began to become more solid in my head, I guess. I keep using the crystallized metaphor. I don't know why. And while I was doing that, I started reading about financial independence because it was an idea that I really hadn't been familiar with before. And as part of that, I discovered Mr. Money Mustache, as many people have. And Pete has an amazing article called The Shockingly Simple Math Behind Early Retirement. And that article, it like blew my mind because he made it very simple. Again, not easy, but simple. He demonstrated how that math worked. And I realized, financial independence, it all goes back to what I call the fundamental equation of personal finance, which is what you earn minus what you spend is what you have left over. Very basic, right? But if you can create that gap, if you can stretch that gap, you can have a lot left over, which is an idea that it shouldn't be so amazing and mind-blowing, but it is. And I think it's true for all of us that find financial independence. We're like, oh, this is amazing if I can create the gap there. So coming now to the infographic that you asked me about, during this time off, I managed to just jot notes down and eventually develop this philosophy that I thought could be applied. It's basically like an introduction to financial independence, this philosophy that I've developed. And it's not really a philosophy, it's more like a methodology. And I realized that when we talk about financial independence, everyone's always talking about what I consider one of the final stages, that they're talking about when you've finally reached that point that you have enough money that you never have to earn anything again for the rest of your life, as long as you maintain your lifestyle the way it is. And that's what most people mean when they say financial independence. But talking to people, with Jim Collins, for example, he talks about FU money. Talking with other people, I realize there are definitely many stages of financial independence. It's not just one point and boom, you're there. It's a linear progression. And so I realized that for me, in my own life, when I was deep in debt, I had a sort of financial dependence there that's different from somebody who's working and they're almost to the point where they could quit their job if they wanted to. And so I sat down and I drew up this list, 6, it's actually 7 because I have a 0th stage, but 6 stages of financial independence. And they start out stage 0, you're not independent at all. You're dependent on everybody else because you're in debt, or maybe you still live at home. Stage 1 is what I call solvency. And this is where you're actually earning more than you're spending. And that's a degree of financial independence right there, where you're earning more than you're spending. It allows you to pay off debt. It allows you to save. So these steps just progress until you reach financial independence as we know it, or as we talk about it most often, where you've got enough saved that you never have to worry about money again.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you go through those different stages, it's this continuum, right? Where the control is continually shifting to your side of the equation. And long before you get to 25 times your annual expenses, your ability to dictate or design the future you want to live into is becoming more and more apparent.
And you can take more risks.
You can take more risks. You make better decisions because you're operating from a place of strength.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's what it is the further you progress down the path toward financial independence or financial freedom, the more control you have. And it all comes from creating that gap between what you earn and what you spend. And again, it's so simple. It's such a simple concept that most people overlook it. They don't even think about it. When you go through your day-to-day life, most of the people you talk to, they're not interested in financial independence. Or maybe they would be interested if they even gave it a moment's thought. But they think it's like something that they can never achieve. They're like, oh, how could I ever do that? I don't have enough money. And they just don't understand how the math works, which is too bad.
And so, JD, these first two stages, solvency and stability, these could really work for anybody, right? Regardless of what their savings rate is. You know, we talk about kind of absurd savings rates, 50, 70, 80% in the FI community. But for regular people out there who are mired in debt, just like you were, it could be the difference for solvency could be a 5% savings rate or 10, right? And just making choices.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. It's an important point to get across. It's something that I want to start writing more for people who are just getting started down the path to financial independence, I guess, or people who are still struggling with debt, who haven't even thought about financial independence. Money Boss, I feel like mainly I've been preaching to the choir. It's stuff that people already know. I want to reach the people who haven't really thought about this before and who are new to the concepts.
You know, we talk about stage one being solvency and stage two being stability, and those are easily understood. But I think where people get bogged down and where we lose people to attrition is stage three and stage four, which is agency and security. Would you take a few minutes and I guess the word is unpack that. That's our signature word. But go through like what is the difference between those two and how do you define them?
Well, okay. So for me, I think stage three, after having achieved stage three and working towards stage four, this is where most people struggle. And I'll just summarize them briefly. So stage three is what I call agency. This is what Jim Collins would say, where you have FU money. You basically have the freedom to live and work as you want. I mean, you've already paid off all your debt, including your student loans and your mortgage. Or, I mean, some people would choose to carry a mortgage, but they have the cash to pay it off if they want. I'm not going to get into that argument here. And they've got enough bank that they could quit their job at a moment's notice without any kind of worry about the future. This is stage three. Stage four is security, and that's when your investment income is enough to cover basic needs, not your current lifestyle, but basic needs. I mean, if you had to, and that's all the money you would ever have in your life, you could go find a cheap place to live, eat ramen every meal. And that's stage four. But there's a huge gap between agency and security, between having FU money and then having this raw kind of financial independence. And people really struggle with that because whereas the getting out of debt might take a year, 2, 3 years, depending on how much you have. And then these other stages come quickly. Moving from FU money to actually that basic financial independence, that can take a decade. It can take 12 years, 15 years. It can take longer if your savings rate isn't high. And that's where people get bogged down and they get frustrated and they lose their way.
I really want to focus on that. It'd be easy to breeze through stage 3 and 4 and just talk about stage 5, which is financial independence. But the value of resources like Money Boss and Get Rich Slowly and Choose FI and just the FI community at large is that they keep you motivated from the progression from agency to security. You need someone that's walking right alongside you, someone that's producing new content and giving you that extra little piece that maybe you hadn't considered before. And that's the value of having a travel guide. Someone like you documenting the journey right alongside the audience. And when you see what bloggers are doing now, that's the template that we use. And we got that from you.
Thanks.
Well, you're welcome. All right. So finally, stage 5. This is the one that gets the highlighter. This is the one that we always talk about. This is the idea of financial independence. And I don't think our audience really needs to be reintroduced to that concept because obviously our entire show is around that. Generally, we define it as having 25 times your annual expenses, but essentially it's this point in time where you have this perpetual money-making machine and your money is actually earning enough for you that work at this point is optional, at least based on your current expenses and your current standard of living. But what I think would be extremely beneficial would be if you could just maybe take a few minutes and talk through what your life is like in this stage 5, this financial independence stage. And before you go into all of that, maybe you even take a step back and walk us through that moment in time, if you can remember it, where you did start to walk through those early stages, those stage 1, 2, 3, and 4. I think that would be extremely beneficial from our audience just to get your perspective on that journey.
Well, yes, I can remember the stages, but again, I was not defining them in that way at that time because the concept of financial independence hadn't occurred to me yet. I'd read a little bit about it, but hadn't latched onto it. But I know very well, and I remember the feelings when these different events occurred. So, for example, the solvency, that happened right around the time I started Get Rich Slowly. I realized that in order to achieve solvency, I have to earn more than I spend. And right around Get Rich Slowly, that's right around when that started, is when that happened. I started cutting my costs so that I actually had a positive cash flow. And that positive cash flow is a huge, huge thing. And then I remember when I paid off my consumer debt, that was in December of 2007, right on schedule. I forgot to mention that. I mentioned that I had created this plan and I wanted to get it done by December 2007, and that's when I did it. And then stage 3 in my little roadmap is a agency where you have the freedom to live and work as you choose. And that occurred for me very quickly after I reached stability, because very soon after I paid off the consumer debt, I was able to quit my job working for the family box factory and just work full time on my websites. And that was amazing. And then from there, I'm still in stage 5, which is independence, the financial independence that we're familiar with. I don't know whether I will ever reach what I've got down to stage 6, which is abundance, where you have so much money that you don't ever really have to worry about it, no matter what you spend it on. Like most of us, I still have to live just a modest lifestyle, but my savings can support that.
All right, JD, so you are at stage 5, which is financial independence, right? But again, it's not this abundance where you can just go out and buy private jets and yachts and whatnot, right? But you're living a life that is self-directed, right? You have enough to sustain yourself and to live a very comfortable life. But what does that life look like, both financially and just how do you fill your time? What do your days look like?
That is a great question. And it's something that I've had to ask myself and discover for myself over the past few years. Right now, this summer, my time has been spent working on the house that my girlfriend and I bought. We bought a new house. It's from 1948, had tons of stuff wrong with it. The previous owners hadn't maintained it. So my time has been dedicated to fixing up this house and getting it prepped to be this space where we can live and raise our family of pets. We have a dog and 2 cats. But that's a change in direction from where I had been. I had been living closer into Portland. I live in Portland, Oregon, in a very walkable neighborhood that I loved, but increasingly had become less right for who I am and where I am in life. And so I think one important thing to point out, this is going to dovetail into a key part of my philosophy, is I think it's very important for all of us to get as clear as possible on what our personal mission is. I talk about personal mission statements, and I write about this a lot at Money Boss. Most people just kind of live reactively, right? They go through life, they do what's expected of them, they do what they think they're supposed to do, they buy a house because everybody buys a house, they have kids because everybody else has kids, and it's less conscious than I want it to be, or than I think it should be. And so what I've tried to do is create this personal mission statement that directs my choices, and I encourage other people who read Money Boss to do the same thing. So what I'm doing with my lifestyle when I'm moving away from the city and moving, it's not really in the country, but it's a place with an acre. It's a place for me to go on walks through the neighborhood. I'm trying to align my life with what my mission is. And part of that, I'm very excited. Tomorrow, I've got a shed coming in. It's one of these tough sheds that you can get from Home Depot. That is going to be my office. That's going to be my writing space. It's a blank canvas that I can put the bookshelves in. I can do everything I want with that. And that's going to be Money Boss HQ, man.
What comics are going to make it into the shed?
Well, that's a great question. If people have been following me, they know that a couple of years ago, I actually sold the bulk of my comic book collection. I sold it, got $28,000. It helped finance. Yeah, that's a lot of money. It helped finance the RV trip that my girlfriend and I did around the United States. So I have very few left, and they're not comics anybody would like. They're the stuff that I grew up reading as a kid that I love. So
JD, $28,000. That's amazing. What's funny actually is on a handful of podcasts in the last couple of months, I've talked about having this huge collection of baseball cards and comic books and wanting to unload them. Again, actionable tip wise, like, do you have any tips? Like, how did you do it through eBay? Did you have a local comic book seller? Like, what did you do?
Okay, so I have actionable tips and a lot of thoughts on this, actually.
Nice.
So you're going to maximize how much you get. If you have a collection, if you have some collectibles, you will always get the most bang for your buck by piecing them out, selling each item, like each comic book or each baseball card, individually via eBay or whatever it is, through whatever venue. However, that takes a lot of work and a lot of time. And in my case, I didn't want to do that. So I reserved like the 100 most valuable comic books, but then I took the bulk of the collection and I sold them to a place called mycomicshop.com. I think it's in Dallas. And they basically, you make a list of, they have it automated. You make a list of what you have and what condition you think it's in. You send it to them, and they give you an offer, and it's easy. And then I took the rest of the comics, the most valuable ones, and those I did piece out because that was worthwhile to do.
But how awesome is it, Brad, that we found the one personal finance blogger out there that could give you actionable advice on how to sell your comics?
Dude, there's no doubt about it. But I suspect there are other people, I don't bring this up just because I'm looking to sell my dopey comic books. I suspect there are many people out there with collectibles and, you have them in your attic or in the garage or something, and you want to sell these things, and it's difficult mentally, right?
Well, and the thing is, a lot of times the things that people think are worth money, they are theoretically worth money, and there are price guides that tell you they're worth money, but they're only worth what somebody's going to pay you. And you're going to be hard pressed to find somebody who's going to pay you. I go to antique stores and I see they have these comic books and they want outrageous prices for them. I think there's no way anybody is going to pay $100 for a copy of Richie Rich number 26 or whatever. It's just not going to happen. Anyway, you've got to be methodical about your approach. I should write an article on this. I did this for Reddit or some other site, and I gave all my advice, and it was well received. I should do a whole article.
I was totally thinking this is generating new content for JD to go write an article as we were talking about it. But what really strikes me, aside from the fact that we're actually talking about comic books, is the idea of relatability and tying threads to your audience and what you think is so unique and specific to you. Thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of other people are looking for ways just to do life just a little bit smarter. And we focus in large part on the personal finance aspect. But I think the reason JD's blog not only broke through the noise, but defined personal finance for a generation was this idea of living a journey out with other people of like minds that are just looking to see how someone else that's a smart guy that's willing to learn new ideas and tactics and share them. How is JD going to do something? And because whatever he comes up with, it's not going to be a grazing mentality. It's going to have some thought put behind it. And I think it's that was the secret sauce in the old Get Rich Slowly and also over in Money Boss. Yeah. It's that personal aspect.
And also, I think going back, we touched on this briefly, is I try not to be prescriptive. I try to be descriptive. I don't try to say, this is the way you have to do it. This is the right way. I try to say, this is how I'm doing it, and this is how other people have done it, and this is what's worked.
So JD, one of the reasons we've been reserving this particular thread or this particular conversation for you is because you're uniquely positioned to answer it as someone that was there literally at the beginning. And we've talked a little bit about the progression of the blogosphere, the progression of blogs being this journey that kind of walks alongside you through this process. I would love to get your insight and input. Where do you think this movement goes? I would say personally, Brad and I both believe that the FI community is on almost this hockey stick trajectory where you're seeing it almost right there at the cusp of getting mainstream attention. Where do you see this movement going in the coming, 2 or 3 years?
It's tough to predict, honestly. I mean, I just read an article from Gwen at Fiery Millennial today. She writes about what she calls the financial independence threshold, early retirement threshold. And basically what she's trying to describe is critical mass. She's talking about how financial independence started off as this fringe idea being pushed primarily by books like Your Money or Your Life and bloggers like Mr. Money Mustache. It's this fringe idea. And then it gradually seeps out and more people latch onto it. So for example, I hadn't considered financial independence until I started reading Pete's stuff and realized, oh, wow, this makes a lot of sense. And here's how it fits with my own philosophy. And so then I became an advocate of financial independence and trying to push people towards financial independence. And then we've helped other people. You guys get on board, you're doing your podcast, and it just spreads and spreads. So I think what Gwen is trying to describe with her article is this kind of critical mass that's being achieved, and more people are wanting to talk about it, at least with me. And maybe that's because they know I write about money, but they want to, I feel like it is going to become more mainstream. It's never going to become hugely mainstream because there are a lot of perceived sacrifices that you have to give in order to achieve financial independence, right? You have to agree that you're going to live well below your means in order to create that gap, in order to create that high savings rate. You have to make some sacrifices in the short term, and that's not for everybody.
All right, JD. Well, before we let you go today, we're super excited to introduce you to the hot seat. Have you heard our hot seat yet?
I have not heard your hot seat.
Oh, yes.
You're in for a real treat.
Oh, no.
Right.
I'm scared.
In a world drowning in debt and rampant consumption, trapped by the chains of lifestyle inflation, these questions highlight the secrets of those who have broken free. Welcome to the Choose FI Hot Seat.
Wow.
JD, you are the first guest we're recording where we're seeing the video, and just to see your face was priceless. So thank you for that.
That was amazing. Yeah.
Thank you, Fiverr. Jonathan found somebody on Fiverr to make that.
Yeah. Use the resources that are available to you.
You know, if I ever do a podcast, if I ever do my own podcast, and I hope someday I will, I'm going to get Jim Collins to do it, to do some sort of intro for me, because he's got that
Gravel.
Radio voice.
Oh, he does.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, he does. Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And in fact, it was that gravel aspect that I was looking for when I found someone to do that intro. You 100% nailed it.
Nice.
All right, JD. So hot seat question number 1, your favorite blog that's not your own.
Well, let's see. You know, the one I've read the longest, probably my favorite, is kottke.org, Jason Kottke's blog, it's about nothing. It's about everything. No, it's just, he posts several links a day, and it's always fascinating stuff. My favorite one that's semi-related to personal finance is David Kane's blog called Raptitude. And it's not really about money, but it's about becoming a better human. And I think he publishes great essays. I love his style and approach.
Awesome. Wow. I haven't heard of either of those. So it's always cool when you get some new resources to go check out. I'll definitely link to that in the show notes. All right. Question number 2, your favorite article of all time. Now, this could be an article that you wrote or somebody else's.
Oh, this is tough. There's so many good ones that I like from all sorts of places, including myself. Pete's article at Mr. Money Mustache about the shockingly simple math of early retirement, that's one of my favorites because it so revolutionized my own personal approach to money and my own personal philosophy about personal finance. My favorite stuff from myself tends to be not financially related. I wrote a couple of articles at Money Boss that built on some stuff I had done at Get Rich Slowly, and they're called How to Build Confidence and Destroy Fear is the first part, and How to Be Happy and Lead a Meaningful Life is the second part. And I've got a third part that I want to write, but yeah, never going to happen. But those 2 articles are my favorite articles that I've written because I feel like they give some real good information about how to approach life and how to lead a better life.
All right. Question number 3, your favorite life hack.
Well, I think we kind of touched on this earlier. My favorite life hack is the notion that action creates motivation. I think a lot of times people wait for the motivation to come before they get started on something, like lose weight or start saving, whatever it is. But the reality is action is what actually creates the motivation. The motivation doesn't come first. The action has to come first. And so what this boils down to is, say you want to lose weight or you want to be a runner. Well, then you go out and you run. And once you run, the first 5 minutes suck, but once you're into it, you're like, okay, I can do this. And it creates the motivation and you finish the run. I don't know anyone who goes out for a run and then decides like 10 minutes in, I'm going to stop.
All right, JD, question number 4, your biggest financial mistake.
Biggest financial mistake. Well, there are several different ones I could talk about. Okay, so biggest as far as like magnitude is when it came time to sell Get Rich Slowly back in the day. I took an offer that was 30% less because I didn't want to stick around. I didn't want to sign a contract that I would stick around for 3 years to work on the site. And then I stuck around for 3 years and worked on the site anyhow. And so I essentially sacrificed 30% of what I could have had a lot more money. Yeah, that magnitude wise, that's the biggest mistake. Psychological wise, I think the biggest mistake that I made is when I was young, this is 1995, and I'm struggling with the credit card debt. My father passed away, and he left some life insurance money. He didn't have anything that he could leave in a will or anything, but he left us a few $1,000s each of life insurance money. And I didn't use any of that to pay off debt. Maybe I paid off $500 or $1,000, but I took it and I went and bought a new computer and some comic books. And when I look back on it, that is probably one of the dumbest things that I've done just from a psychological perspective.
All right. Question number 5, the advice you would give your younger self.
Advice for younger self. Don't care what other people think. What does it matter? When I was young, so much of what I did based on what I thought other people. I've said this a couple times in the show. I think I was basing my actions on what I thought I was supposed to do. I was trying to impress other people. I wanted other people to like me. The older I get, the more I don't care. Yeah, obviously it's nice if people like you, right? But more and more, I make the decisions that are right for me, and I don't care what other people think. As long as I'm not harming anybody else, I do what I want.
All right. And then we do got a bonus question for you today. Your favorite purchase made on Amazon.com last year, or if not Amazon, your favorite purchase in general.
My favorite purchase in general from the past year is our new house, because despite the amount of work and remodeling that we're having to do to it, I love the place. But my favorite Amazon purchase, believe it or not, it's like this. It's this 15-ounce tin, maybe it's a pound of bar mix. It's so tasty. Yeah, I know. It's like pretzels and peanuts with Cajun.
JD, that's unbelievable, because we just ordered that from. So I want to trade notes with you. We'll put it in the show notes of what especially you bought, because we bought a trail mix from Amazon. It was like I wound up getting a coupon to get it for free. And my wife, Laura, said it is literally the best food she has ever eaten in her whole life.
Best food.
I kid you not. We will have it in the show notes for the one that we got and the one that you got as well.
All right. That sounds good.
All right.
I know it sounds like hyperbole, but I kid you not, like this stuff is delicious.
Literally. I want to use the word literally here.
And that bar mix that I got, it's so tasty. It's with beer.
You better get back on that CrossFit routine, man. That's going to destroy you.
I know.
Okay. All right, Brad, did you get the feeling, like we've been talking to Jay for like an hour, and this entire time in my mind, what came through is this like passionate love of Get Rich Slowly. And the whole time I'm thinking, JD, is there an announcement you want to make?
Well, yes. So I do love Get Rich Slowly, and I've always loved Get Rich Slowly. And while I don't regret having sold it because, it helped me achieve financial independence, I miss so much about it. I miss the community. I miss the platform. I miss the branding. I miss the freedom. I mean, Money Boss is great. I love Money Boss, but I feel like I boxed myself into a corner and I can only write about very specific things there. Whereas Get Rich Slowly, I can write about anything related to money. And so a few months ago, the people who bought Get Rich Slowly from me approached me and they said, hey, would you be interested in buying the site back? And I said, well, let's talk about it. And so we've been talking about it for a few months, and we finally have terms. We've agreed to terms, and it looks very likely that, I'll be back running and writing at Get Rich Slowly very soon.
I think that in the personal finance world, that might break the internet.
And it'd be awesome. I'm trying not to be giddy. I told you guys earlier before we started recording that for months I have not allowed myself to get excited about this, because I know there's a million different things that could go wrong, right? They could decide they want to keep it. The stock market might crash and all of a sudden I don't have money to buy it. All sorts of things could go wrong. And it's only now that I actually have written paperwork and we're like discussing where commas go, instead of discussing the terms, that I'm finally allowing myself to get excited, and I'm very excited.
It's like this giant homecoming or reunion. I'm so excited for you if it goes through, and I cannot wait to tell our community about it, because there's so many people that discovered personal finance through your blog and frankly have missed you.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is an amazing announcement, JD. And I can hear just the joy in your voice. I mean, it's exciting for you. It's exciting for us. It's exciting for everyone. So a hearty congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, JD, thank you so much for coming on the show and just sharing your time with us. And there's going to be a lot of people out there that are going to want to connect or reconnect with you with your new project. And what's the best way for people to connect with you?
The best way is to head on over to moneyboss.com. That's where I've been writing about money for the past couple of years. My premise there is that everyone understands that a business needs to make a profit in order to survive and keep doing what it wants to do. But what few people understand is that people need to make profits. And so what I want you to do is be the boss of your own life. I want you to be the chief financial officer of your own life. I want you to be a money boss. You can also find me on Twitter. I'm at JD Roth, ROTH. And I'm not the best Twitter person in the world. On Facebook, the Money Boss Facebook group is not as active as I want it to be. So I would love it if some people would come join the Money Boss group and contribute. I know that I need to lead by example there. I could be more active too. But I would love for the Facebook group to get some traction.
JD, thank you so much for coming on the show today and for sharing this amazing news with us and with our community. I can't begin to tell you how excited we are for you.
Yeah, this is fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited that you guys are the first people who get to hear about it.
And I think we're going to get a chance to see you in a couple weeks at FinCon, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
All right, awesome. We'll see you there. Okay, and just to our audience, just to let you know, this did actually happen. Get Rich Slowly. The keys were turned back over to JD on Sunday, the 15th. And you're hearing this morning on October 16th, 2017. Go on over to Get Rich Slowly and say hi. I know how much you would appreciate that. And we were just thrilled to be able to be a part of this wonderful announcement. So thank you for joining us for this special episode today. And thank you for being a part of the ChooseFI community. If you want to support us, here are 4 easy ways. 1, leave us an iTunes review. If you want to do that, just go to ChooseFI.com/iTunes. 2, use our page to sign up for travel credit cards. If you want to travel the world with miles and points instead of your hard-earned dollars, then just go to ChooseFI.com/cards and get started today. 3, if you're working on the milestones of FI, set up a personal capital account to track your progress and use our affiliate link. It's completely free and just go to ChooseFI.com/PC. P as in Paul, C as in cat. And 4, and most importantly, find your friends, coworkers, and family members who might be open to this message and tell them about the podcast. Have them start with episode 38, The Why of FI, and right behind that, have them go listen to episode 21, The Pillars of FI. It is a fantastic starting place. All right, my friends, the fire is spreading. We'll see you next time as we continue to go down the road less traveled.
You've been listening to ChooseFI Radio Podcast, where we help middle-class America build wealth, one life hack at a time.